There is a strange reality in life that many intelligent people eventually discover. Knowledge does not protect you from difficult people. Wisdom does not guarantee that everyone around you will understand you. In fact, the more aware you become, the more often you will encounter those who are careless, emotional, irrational, and sometimes impossible to reason with. And the greatest mistake an intelligent person can make is to expect everyone to think at the same level. True intelligence is not proven by winning arguments, humiliating others, or becoming frustrated by ignorance. It is revealed in how you preserve your peace, how you choose your battles, and how you respond when confronted with foolishness. Because the strongest mind is not the one that controls others, but the one that remains undisturbed by them. Today, we will explore how truly intelligent people deal with stupid people, and why their greatest weapon is not superiority, but mastery over themselves. One of the greatest sources of frustration for intelligent people is not the lack of information, nor the absence of opportunity, but the expectation that everyone around them should see the world in the same way they do. Intelligence has a strange tendency to create assumptions. When you understand something quickly, you unconsciously begin to believe that others should understand it just as quickly. When you value logic, you expect others to value logic. When you seek truth, you assume others are equally interested in truth. Yet life repeatedly reveals a different reality. People are shaped by different experiences, different fears, different desires, and different levels of awareness. Two individuals can witness the same event and come away with completely different conclusions. What appears obvious to you may seem confusing to someone else. What you consider common sense may not even exist within another person's frame of reference. This does not always mean they are evil, nor does it necessarily mean they are incapable. It simply means they are operating from a different level of understanding. Many intelligent people exhaust themselves because they spend enormous amounts of energy trying to force understanding where there is no readiness. They explain the same thing repeatedly. They argue endlessly. They become irritated when people refuse to accept facts. Eventually, disappointment grows into resentment, not because reality has betrayed them, but because their expectations have become unrealistic. Wisdom begins when you recognize that intelligence does not grant you ownership over truth, and it certainly does not obligate others to think the way you do. Every person lives inside a mental world built by habits, emotions, upbringing, and personal experiences. Changing those deeply rooted patterns is not something that happens because you won an argument or because your evidence was stronger. Human beings are emotional creatures long before they become rational ones. This understanding changes the way you communicate. Instead of becoming angry when people fail to understand you, you become curious. Instead of immediately judging, you begin observing. Instead of assuming bad intentions, you recognize limitations. Some people lack knowledge, others lack maturity. Some are blinded by pride, others are imprisoned by fear. Many are simply repeating beliefs they have never questioned. An intelligent person who lacks patience often becomes lonely. Not because nobody understands them, but because they have made understanding a requirement for respect. They become irritated by differences. They classify people too quickly. They expect everyone to operate according to standards they have established in their own minds. Over time, this expectation becomes a burden heavier than any difficult person. True intelligence is accompanied by humility. Humility does not mean pretending that everyone is equally knowledgeable. It means understanding that human beings develop at different speeds. Some lessons that seem obvious to you took years for you to learn. There was a time when you yourself misunderstood things that are now crystal clear. There was a time when you acted foolishly. There was a time when others had to be patient with you. When you remember this, compassion naturally replaces arrogance. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself constantly. You no longer measure your value by how many people agree with you. You stop expecting perfect understanding from imperfect people. This simple shift brings remarkable peace. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every opinion demands a response. Sometimes silence communicates more wisdom than endless explanations. Sometimes walking away is a sign of maturity rather than defeat. There are people who seek understanding, and there are people who seek victory. Confusing the two leads to endless frustration. Acceptance does not mean lowering your standards or embracing foolishness. It means seeing reality clearly. You recognize people as they are instead of insisting they become who you want them to be. Expectations based on fantasy create suffering. Expectations grounded in reality create peace. When you stop expecting everyone to think like you free yourself from constant disappointment. You become less reactive. You become less offended. You become less emotionally dependent on the opinions and behaviors of others. You understand that your responsibility is to manage your own mind, not to control someone else's. You begin to appreciate diversity in thought without feeling threatened by it. You recognize that agreement is not always necessary for coexistence. You understand that wisdom is not measured by how many arguments you win, but by how much peace you preserve. You learn to distinguish between teaching and forcing, between guiding and controlling, between influence and domination. Some people will never understand your perspective, no matter how clearly you explain it. Some individuals are not interested in growth. Others are attached to their beliefs because those beliefs provide comfort and identity. Fighting against this reality only drains your strength. Accepting it allows you to conserve your energy for people who are willing to listen, willing to learn, and willing to evolve. The moment you release the expectation that everyone should think like you stop fighting against human nature itself. You begin to move through life with greater patience, greater awareness, and greater emotional freedom. One of the most important skills an intelligent person can develop is the ability to distinguish between ignorance and malice. Many people suffer unnecessary frustration because they treat every foolish action as a personal attack. They assume that if someone behaves irrationally, speaks carelessly, or makes repeated mistakes, there must be evil intentions behind it. Yet reality is often more complicated. Not everyone who causes problems is trying to hurt you. Not everyone who disagrees with you is your enemy. Sometimes people are simply unaware. Sometimes they are inexperienced. Sometimes they are trapped within their own limitations. Ignorance is the absence of understanding. Malice is the deliberate intention to cause harm. These two things may produce similar outcomes, but they arise from entirely different sources. A person who lacks knowledge may say something offensive without realizing the impact of their words. Another person may spread misinformation because they genuinely believe what they are saying. Some individuals make poor decisions because nobody taught them better. Others repeat unhealthy patterns they have observed throughout their lives. Their actions may still create difficulties, but the root of the problem is not cruelty. It is lack of awareness. When intelligent people fail to recognize this distinction, they often become emotionally exhausted. They begin fighting battles that do not need to be fought. They carry resentment toward people who never intended harm. They spend countless hours trying to punish ignorance as though it were wickedness. In doing so, they poison their own peace. Anger grows stronger because the mind believes it is under attack, even when the situation is simply a reflection of another person's limitations. Wisdom requires careful observation. Before reacting, it asks important questions. Is this person intentionally trying to hurt me? Or are they simply unaware? Are they acting from hatred? Or are they acting from fear? Are they manipulating? Or are they confused? These questions prevent unnecessary conflict. They create space between emotion and reaction. They allow clarity to replace assumptions. Many people speak from pain rather than understanding. Their words are shaped by insecurity, disappointment, jealousy, and unresolved wounds. A person who constantly criticizes others may secretly feel inadequate. Someone who spreads negativity may be carrying bitterness they have never learned to release. A person who behaves arrogantly may actually be protecting deep feelings of weakness. None of this excuses destructive behavior, but it changes how you perceive it. You stop taking everything personally because you understand that much of what people do is a reflection of their internal struggles rather than your worth. Compassion becomes possible when you recognize ignorance for what it is. Compassion does not mean tolerating abuse. It does not mean allowing people to mistreat you. It means refusing to turn every mistake into a declaration of war. It means understanding that human beings are imperfect creatures who often act without awareness. Just as a child touching fire does not understand the consequences, many adults move through life without fully understanding the consequences of their actions. At the same time, wisdom also recognizes genuine malice. There are individuals who knowingly deceive, manipulate, exploit, and harm others. They understand the damage they cause, yet continue because it benefits them. Such people do exist, and pretending otherwise is not compassion, it is naivety. Intelligence does not blind itself to evil. It simply refuses to confuse ignorance with cruelty. This distinction protects your emotional energy. If someone is ignorant, patience may help, education may help, understanding may help. But if someone acts with deliberate malice, a different response becomes necessary. Boundaries become essential. Distance becomes wisdom. Silence becomes protection. Continuing to explain yourself to someone committed to harming you only creates further suffering. Many intelligent people waste years trying to change those who have no desire to change. They assume every problem can be solved through logic and conversation. Yet, some individuals are not seeking truth, they are seeking control. They are not interested in understanding, they are interested in winning. Recognizing this reality prevents endless disappointment. There is also another danger. Sometimes people label others as malicious simply because they disagree with them. This tendency creates division. It turns ordinary misunderstandings into personal conflicts. A different opinion does not automatically indicate evil intentions. Human beings are complex. They interpret reality through different experiences and beliefs. Assuming the worst about everyone creates unnecessary hostility and destroys relationships that could have been strengthened through patience and dialogue. An intelligent mind learns to observe behavior over time rather than making instant judgments. Patterns reveal truth more clearly than isolated incidents. A single mistake does not define a person. One careless statement does not reveal the entirety of someone's character. Consistent actions expose intentions. Repeated dishonesty reveals manipulation. Persistent disrespect reveals contempt. Continual acts of kindness reveal sincerity. Understanding the difference between ignorance and malice allows you to respond with greater wisdom. You become less reactive and more discerning. You stop wasting emotional energy on misunderstandings. You become capable of offering patience where patience is needed and firmness where firmness is required. You learn when to teach, when to forgive, when to walk away, and when to protect yourself. You recognize that not every difficult person is evil, and not every harmful action comes from hatred. You begin seeing people more clearly, and through that clarity, your mind becomes calmer, your judgments become wiser, and your actions become far more effective. One of the greatest traps intelligent people fall into is the belief that every argument must be won. They assume that if they possess the facts, if their reasoning is stronger, and if their evidence is clear, then surely others will recognize the truth. Yet life repeatedly demonstrates a different lesson. Not every disagreement is a search for understanding. Not every conversation is an exchange of wisdom. Many arguments are nothing more than battles between egos, where both sides are more interested in proving themselves right than discovering what is right. There is a profound difference between communication and competition. Communication seeks clarity. Competition seeks victory. When people become emotionally attached to their opinions, logic often disappears. Facts no longer matter. Pride takes control. The conversation stops being about truth and starts becoming about identity. At that moment, even the most brilliant explanation becomes useless because the other person is not listening to understand. They are listening to defend. Intelligent people often make the mistake of assuming that others value reason in the same way they do. They believe that presenting stronger arguments will naturally lead to better outcomes. But human beings are not always guided by logic. Emotions, fears, insecurities, and personal experiences influence decisions far more than facts alone. A person who feels attacked rarely changes their mind. Instead, they strengthen their resistance. The harder you push, the more firmly they cling to their position. This is why wisdom does not seek victory at any cost. Wisdom seeks peace. Peace does not mean weakness. Peace does not mean surrendering your beliefs. Peace means understanding that your emotional stability is worth more than the satisfaction of winning a pointless debate. There are many people who would gladly spend hours arguing with you, draining your energy, consuming your attention, and disturbing your mind. They leave the conversation unchanged while you are left exhausted. In such situations, the real victory belongs to the person who refuses to be trapped. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves an explanation. Not every insult deserves retaliation. Many intelligent people suffer because they give too much importance to the words of those who have no intention of understanding them. They believe silence is defeat. Yet silence can be one of the greatest expressions of strength. A mountain does not argue with the wind. The ocean does not become disturbed because someone throws a stone into it. True strength lies in remaining grounded while chaos surrounds you. There are people who argue because they seek knowledge. And there are people who argue because conflict gives them satisfaction. The wise learn to distinguish between the two. A person genuinely seeking understanding asks questions. They listen. They reflect. They remain open to different perspectives. But a person seeking conflict interrupts, attacks, mocks, and dismisses. Their goal is not clarity. Their goal is domination. Engaging endlessly with such individuals only pulls you into their world of negativity. Every argument carries a cost. Even if you win intellectually, you may lose emotionally. You may sacrifice your peace, your time, and your focus. You may spend hours replaying the conversation in your mind, thinking of better responses, carrying frustration long after the discussion has ended. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. Opportunities pass, relationships suffer. Your inner balance becomes disturbed, all because you became attached to proving a point. There is a reason why truly wise people often appear calm. It is not because they lack opinions. It is because they understand the value of energy. Energy is precious. Attention is precious. Time is precious. Wasting these gifts on meaningless battles is like pouring clean water into the sand. Once gone, they cannot be recovered. Intelligent people protect their resources carefully. They invest them where growth is possible and withdraw them where resistance is endless. Many people confuse emotional reactions with strength. They believe raising their voice proves confidence. They believe humiliating others proves intelligence. They believe having the last word proves superiority. Yet these behaviors often reveal insecurity rather than wisdom. A person who is truly secure does not need constant validation. They do not feel compelled to defeat everyone who disagrees with them. They are comfortable allowing others to hold different opinions without experiencing personal offense. Choosing peace over pointless arguments also requires humility. It means accepting that you do not need to correct every misunderstanding. You do not need universal approval. You do not need everyone to agree with you. The desire to always be right can become a prison. It creates endless tension because the world is full of people who think differently. If your happiness depends upon changing them, you will remain in constant conflict. Sometimes the most powerful response is a smile. Sometimes it is changing the subject. Sometimes it is walking away. Sometimes it is simply saying nothing. These actions are not signs of defeat. They are signs of self-mastery. They reveal a person who values inner harmony more than external victories. They reveal someone who understands that peace is not found by controlling others, but by controlling oneself. There are battles worth fighting. There are moments when truth must be defended and injustice must be confronted. But wisdom lies in knowing the difference between necessary struggles and useless confrontations. Not every hill deserves your sacrifice. Not every disagreement deserves your attention. Not every challenge deserves your response. When you stop measuring success by how many arguments you win, you begin measuring success by how much peace you preserve. You become less reactive. You become more patient. You become harder to provoke. You stop allowing foolishness to dictate your emotions. You no longer hand over control of your mind to people who have done nothing to earn it. You learn that sometimes the greatest display of intelligence is not proving that you are right, but recognizing that your tranquility is far too valuable to be exchanged for temporary satisfaction. One of the clearest signs of intelligence is not how much knowledge a person possesses, nor how quickly they can solve problems, but how well they can govern their emotions. Knowledge may impress others, but self-mastery determines the quality of your life. Many people spend years developing skills, acquiring information, and pursuing success, yet they remain prisoners of anger, frustration, and impulsive reactions. They allow the behavior of others to dictate their inner state. A careless word ruins their day. A disagreement steals their peace. An insult controls their thoughts long after the moment has passed. Human beings often believe they are reacting to events, but in reality, they are reacting to their interpretation of those events. Two people can face the same situation and experience entirely different emotions. One person sees criticism and becomes furious. Another sees criticism and becomes curious. One sees an obstacle and feels defeated. Another sees an opportunity and feels challenged. The difference is not in the event itself, but in the mind that interprets it. This is why intelligent people understand that emotions are powerful servants, but dangerous masters. Emotions are natural. They are part of being human. Fear protects us. Anger alerts us. Sadness helps us process loss. Joy gives meaning to life. The problem begins when emotions become rulers rather than messengers. When anger takes control, judgment becomes clouded. When pride takes control, humility disappears. When fear dominates, opportunities are avoided. Acting under the influence of uncontrolled emotions often leads to regret. Most people believe strength means overpowering others. They imagine strength as domination, aggression, and force. Yet history and experience repeatedly reveal a deeper truth. The hardest person to conquer is not your enemy, it is yourself. Controlling your tongue when you are angry requires more discipline than winning an argument. Remaining calm when others insult you requires more strength than shouting louder. Maintaining dignity when others behave foolishly demands greater power than seeking revenge. Reactive people are easily manipulated because their emotions become their weaknesses. Anyone who knows how to provoke them gains control over them. A single insult can disturb their peace. A single criticism can shake their confidence. Their mood rises and falls depending on how others behave. They become emotional puppets, surrendering their inner stability to external circumstances. Intelligent people recognize this danger. They refuse to hand over control of their minds so easily. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. Suppression creates its own problems. Ignored emotions often return with greater intensity. Wisdom lies not in denying emotion, but in observing them. Instead of immediately reacting, intelligent people create space between feeling and action. They allow emotions to arise without allowing emotions to dominate. They understand that feeling anger does not require expressing anger. Feeling offended does not require retaliation. Feeling fear does not require surrender. There is tremendous power in the pause. A few seconds of awareness can prevent years of regret. Many relationships have been destroyed because people reacted in moments of intense emotion. Harsh words spoken in anger leave scars that apologies cannot always erase. Decisions made in fear often lead to missed opportunities. Choices driven by pride frequently create unnecessary suffering. The ability to pause allows wisdom to enter where impulse once ruled. People who lack emotional control often mistake immediate reactions for authenticity. They proudly say whatever comes to mind. They justify their anger by claiming they are simply being honest. Yet honesty without discipline becomes cruelty. Authenticity without wisdom becomes recklessness. Intelligence teaches that not every thought deserves expression. Not every feeling deserves action. Maturity requires restraint. The world is filled with people who will test your patience. Some will misunderstand you. Some will criticize you unfairly. Some will attempt to provoke you. Others will project their frustrations onto you. If your emotional state depends entirely on their behavior, you will spend your life being controlled by forces outside yourself. Inner peace becomes impossible because you have placed the keys to your happiness in the hands of strangers. Intelligent people understand that their emotional responses are their responsibility. They do not blame others for every feeling they experience. They recognize that while they cannot always control what happens around them, they can influence what happens within them. This understanding creates freedom. Instead of being victims of circumstances, they become masters of themselves. Calmness is often misunderstood as weakness. In reality, calmness is a form of power. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can react impulsively. Anyone can shout, insult, and retaliate. These actions require very little discipline. Remaining composed in difficult situations requires awareness. Remaining respectful in the face of disrespect requires character. Remaining patient when surrounded by foolishness requires wisdom. There is a reason why truly strong individuals rarely feel the need to prove themselves. Their confidence comes from within rather than from the approval of others. They do not panic when challenged. They do not collapse under criticism. They do not seek constant validation. Their emotions are anchored by principles rather than circumstances. Because of this, they move through life with greater stability and greater clarity. Mastering your emotions does not mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming conscious. It means understanding that emotions are temporary visitors. not permanent rulers. It means refusing to make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. It means recognizing that anger passes, fear fades, and disappointment eventually loses its power. What remains are the consequences of the actions you chose while those emotions were present. Every difficult person you encounter becomes an opportunity to practice self-control. Every challenge becomes a chance to strengthen your discipline. Every insult becomes a test of your awareness. Instead of asking how to change others, intelligent people focus on changing themselves. They understand that true freedom begins the moment external events lose the power to dictate internal peace. They understand that the greatest victory in life is not conquering other people, but conquering the impulses that seek to control them from within. Many intelligent people make the mistake of believing that being kind means saying yes to everyone, tolerating every behavior, and carrying burdens that do not belong to them. They confuse compassion with self-sacrifice and patience with endless tolerance. Over time, this misunderstanding slowly drains their energy, destroys their peace, and leaves them wondering why they feel exhausted despite having good intentions. What they eventually discover is that kindness without boundaries becomes self-neglect, and compassion without wisdom becomes a doorway through which others may enter and take more than they should. Human beings naturally desire harmony. They want to avoid conflict. They want to be understood, appreciated, and accepted. Because of this, many people remain silent when they should speak. They tolerate disrespect when they should draw a line. They continue giving even when they have nothing left to give. They fear that setting boundaries will make them appear selfish, cold, or uncaring. Yet the absence of boundaries does not create healthy relationships. It creates confusion, resentment, and imbalance. A river without banks becomes a flood. In the same way, a person without boundaries eventually loses direction. Their life becomes controlled by the demands, expectations, and emotions of others. They become so focused on keeping everyone happy that they forget their own needs. Their peace becomes dependent on pleasing people who are impossible to satisfy. Their identity slowly disappears beneath the weight of constant obligation. Intelligent people understand that boundaries are not walls built out of hatred. They are expressions of self-respect. A boundary simply communicates what you will and will not accept. It defines where your responsibility ends and where another person's responsibility begins. Without these limits, relationships become unhealthy because one person constantly gives while the other constantly takes. Many people react negatively when boundaries are established. Those who have benefited from your silence may become uncomfortable when you begin speaking. Those who have grown accustomed to unlimited access to your time and energy may interpret your self-respect as rejection. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish. They may attempt to make you feel guilty. Yet these reactions often reveal more about their expectations than about your character. Compassion does not require surrendering your dignity. You can understand someone's struggles without allowing them to abuse you. You can forgive someone without trusting them again. You can care about people while refusing to participate in their destructive patterns. Wisdom understands that love does not mean accepting everything. Sometimes love requires distance. Sometimes compassion requires saying no. Sometimes kindness appears firm rather than soft. Many intelligent people struggle with guilt because they have been taught to prioritize others above themselves. They believe their value comes from how much they sacrifice. They feel responsible for solving everyone's problems. They attempt to rescue people who refuse to rescue themselves. Yet carrying burdens that belong to others does not help them grow. In many cases, it prevents growth because it removes the consequences necessary for change. There is a difference between supporting someone and enabling someone. Support empowers responsibility. Enabling encourages dependence. Support offers guidance. Enabling removes accountability. Intelligent people recognize this distinction. They understand that constantly rescuing others may provide temporary comfort, but it often creates long-term weakness. True compassion seeks growth, not dependence. Boundaries also protect emotional energy. Some people bring constant drama, negativity, and chaos into every environment they enter. They complain endlessly but reject solutions. They demand attention but refuse responsibility. They create problems and expect others to solve them. Remaining endlessly available to such individuals eventually damages your own peace. Intelligence recognizes that you are not obligated to participate in every emotional storm that others create. Setting boundaries does not mean becoming arrogant or indifferent. It means understanding your limits. Every human being has limited time, limited energy, and limited emotional resources. These resources must be managed wisely. If you give everything away without discernment, you will eventually have nothing left for yourself, your family, your purpose, and the people who genuinely value your presence. Many people imagine that strong boundaries destroy relationships. In reality, healthy boundaries strengthen relationships because they create clarity. They eliminate hidden resentment. They encourage mutual respect. They teach people how to treat you. Relationships built upon fear, guilt, and obligation are fragile. Relationships built upon honesty and respect possess greater stability. There are moments when compassion means listening. There are moments when compassion means helping. But there are also moments when compassion means stepping back. Some individuals must face the consequences of their choices. Some lessons cannot be taught through advice. They must be learned through experience. Trying to protect people from every difficulty often prevents them from developing the strength they need. The ability to say no is not a sign of cruelty. It is a sign of maturity. It reflects an understanding that pleasing everyone is impossible. No matter how generous you are, someone will eventually be disappointed. No matter how much you give, someone will expect more. If your self-worth depends upon meeting everyone's expectations, you will live as a prisoner of endless demands. Truly intelligent people do not build boundaries because they hate others. They build boundaries because they respect themselves. They understand that preserving their peace allows them to give from abundance rather than exhaustion. They understand that kindness loses its beauty when it becomes forced. They understand that resentment grows when generosity is driven by guilt rather than love. There is great wisdom in learning to remain compassionate without becoming available to every request. There is strength in offering understanding without accepting mistreatment. There's maturity in recognizing that protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Because when your mind is calm and your spirit is balanced, your kindness becomes genuine. Your relationships become healthier and your presence becomes far more valuable to those who truly deserve it. One of the greatest forms of intelligence is knowing where to invest your energy. Most people think success is determined only by talent, knowledge, or opportunity, but there is something even more valuable than all of these things. It is attention. Whatever receives your attention receives your life. Whatever consumes your energy eventually shapes your destiny. This is why intelligent people become extremely careful about what they allow into their minds, who they allow into their lives, and which battles they choose to fight. Human energy is limited. Every day presents a certain amount of emotional strength, mental focus, and physical vitality. Yet many people spend these precious resources on things that offer nothing in return. They become obsessed with proving themselves to critics. They waste hours arguing with strangers. They carry resentment toward people who do not even think about them. They replay past insults in their minds. They become trapped in distractions, negativity, and endless drama. Without realizing it, they are spending their lives on things that do not deserve them. Intelligent people understand that energy is like water. If it flows without direction, it is wasted. But when it is focused, it becomes powerful. A river can carve through mountains because its strength is concentrated. In the same way, a focused mind possesses tremendous power. People who achieve meaningful things are not necessarily those with the greatest abilities. They are often those who have learned to protect their energy from unnecessary distractions. Not everyone deserves access to your mind. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every relationship deserves your loyalty. This may sound harsh to those who believe they must be available to everyone, but wisdom teaches otherwise. There are individuals who inspire growth, and there are individuals who constantly drain. Some people bring peace, encouragement, and understanding. Others bring conflict, criticism, and chaos. The company you keep influences the quality of your thoughts, and your thoughts influence the direction of your life. Many intelligent people suffer because they underestimate the power of negative influences. They believe they are strong enough to endure constant negativity without consequences. Yet even the strongest mind is affected by its environment. If you spend enough time surrounded by bitterness, eventually bitterness begins to feel normal. If you constantly expose yourself to gossip, fear, and anger, these emotions slowly become part of your inner world. Human beings absorb more from their surroundings than they realize. This is why protecting your energy sometimes requires difficult decisions. It may require reducing contact with certain people. It may require walking away from environments that destroy your peace. It may require saying no to opportunities that offer money but steal your sanity. It may require disappointing others in order to remain faithful to yourself. Such decisions are not always comfortable, but comfort and wisdom are not always the same. Many people live reactively. Their days are controlled by notifications, distractions, and the demands of others. They wake up and immediately surrender their attention to whatever appears in front of them. Hours disappear without purpose. Their minds become scattered. Their focus becomes weak. They are busy, but not productive. Active, but not effective. Occupied, but not fulfilled. Intelligent people recognize that being busy is not the same as moving toward a meaningful destination. Purpose gives direction to energy. Without purpose, life becomes a series of random reactions. A person without purpose becomes vulnerable to every distraction. They chase temporary pleasures, seek constant approval, and allow circumstances to determine their priorities. But a person who knows what truly matters develops a different relationship with time and energy. They become selective. They understand that every yes requires a no. Every commitment requires sacrifice. Every choice shapes the future. Protecting your energy does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means becoming intentional. It means learning to distinguish between what is essential and what is unnecessary. It means recognizing that not everything urgent is important and not everything loud deserves attention. Modern life constantly competes for your focus. There are endless sources of information, entertainment, and distraction. Without awareness, your attention becomes fragmented, and fragmented attention produces fragmented results. Truly intelligent people understand the value of solitude. They do not fear being alone because they recognize that silence strengthens clarity. In quiet moments, priorities become visible. In stillness, the mind recovers from the noise of the world. Solitude provides the opportunity to reflect, to grow, and to reconnect with what matters most. A person who cannot spend time alone often becomes dependent upon constant stimulation, and dependence weakens inner strength. Protecting your energy also means guarding your emotions. Carrying resentment, envy, and anger consumes enormous amounts of mental power. These emotions act like invisible chains that drain vitality. Intelligent people understand that forgiveness is not always about others. Sometimes forgiveness is an act of self-preservation. Releasing bitterness frees energy that can be directed toward growth and purpose. Purpose acts as a compass. It prevents you from becoming lost in distractions. It reminds you why certain sacrifices are necessary. It gives meaning to discipline and transforms ordinary actions into steps towards something greater. People with clear purpose do not waste excessive time seeking validation because they are focused on contribution. They are too busy building their lives to become consumed by the opinions of those who are merely watching from the sidelines. There will always be critics. There will always be distractions. There will always be people who misunderstand you and circumstances that test your patience. But intelligent people recognize that life is too precious to spend it reacting to everything. They understand that attention is a gift, energy is a resource, and peace is a treasure. They become guardians of their minds rather than victims of their surroundings. They choose carefully what they nourish, what they tolerate, and what they pursue, because they understand that the quality of their life is ultimately determined by the quality of their focus, and the direction of their focus determines the direction of their destiny.